I plead the fifth, body is stiff.
Oh my god.
Merry Christmas.
Okay.
See my jacket, baby. Fuck your life. Fuck your mama. I'm not dirty. That's one song. That's one cross. I'm trying to slap your baby. Oh my baby. Get planned up. Sit man down with a 1, 2, 3 and a push up to where we're hands up. Okay. I'm for Daisy. I'm the baby.
Now the silence is so loud.
Santa Claus is killing, other children crying. Now the Santa Claus is missing. Ain't no presents to your birthday.
Nah, this is
Ain't no
horrible.
presents to your birthday. Other children crying. Now the Santa Claus is killing, other children crying. Now the Santa Claus is missing. Ain't no presents to your birthday.
I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. You fair play, you've made it way worse. Fair play, I'll give you an award for actually making it worse. KSI Clips admin here. Someone has probably already re-uploaded my edit, but I'm posting it anyway, lol. What the hell? Why does this work so well? Hey yo, that's kind of slaps, you know. I really like that. I'm gonna give you an award. Have some fun with that. You see, look, instead of getting the plaque, I've given you a platinum. That's way better. Guys, JJ sent this to me. What do I do? You forgot to apply to my dick pic. I think that was my selfie that I took after England lost to Wales. Wales, France. What a slip. Honestly, we lost because of the ref. The referee was atrocious. The worst ref I've ever seen. That's why we lost. This is a 30-year-old man. Well, look, there are 30-year-old men that suck dick like this. Okay? Like, not me, but there are men that are gay and suck dick with the whole thing. So don't come at me with this he's 30. I'm not even 30. I'm 29. Why do you keep making me 30? Oh, that's where the ball went. That's what he was aiming at. I thought he was trying to score, but now he's trying to hit Harry's mum from years ago. Wedgie.
Right, so remember, you get me in the face, you get £100. Believe in yourself.
Oh.
Believe in yourself. Ready?
Oh wow.
There you go.
Damn.
There you go. There you go.
Oh, false moment. That was kind of cute. Imagine they just got knocked out. He's there like, yeah, you did it, man. You did it. I drew KSI. I hope he likes it. Why is my jaw so fucking fat? Why are my legs so skinny? Why is my abs so small but my chest wham? Why is my chest a rectangle? What is this? What have you done to me? I hate it. I spent my mum's cancer money on finishing this drawing. I love it. This is one of the greatest things I've ever seen. Have some fucking platinum, bro. Have some platinum. Unbelievable. I'm so proud of you. Cost of living crisis got JJ. Oh shit, it's on again. Honestly, I don't even know where the remote is, so I don't know how to turn it on or off again. It just randomly does it. Sometimes it wants to be on, sometimes it wants to be off. JJ, you need to get on Randy's level with the ideas. Laughing at memes while wearing a beanie. Fucking hell, Randall. Wow, bro. Thoughts on this, JJ? Alright, there we go.
Alright, worst tracks of the week. We have just one.
Okay.
KSI's
no.
Sidemen
What?
are back with a holiday bop. And it's not so much a bop. I wanted to turn it off instantly. Christmas Drillings is the name of this one. I don't know if I really need to explain it beyond the title. You know what you're getting. You know, it's a goofy
a banger! You're getting a banger!
rap song that's...
What are you on about, Ventano? You're getting a banger! What are you... How is this the worst track? It's outrageous! You don't know what you're talking about. Your ears are wrong. I mean, look, you're entitled to your opinion, but your opinion sucks. There's just no way. It should be a number one. It should be number one Christmas song. Get out of here.
I don't know if I really need to explain it beyond the title. You know what you're getting. You know, it's a goofy holiday rap song that's also kind of braggy. Yeah, it's not for me. It's not for me. Let's move on.
It's not bragging at all. We're talking about destroying Christmas. We don't give a fuck about bragging. Yo, Ventano is just he's such a hater, man. I wonder if he's listened to this or that. I wonder if he likes that more. Spam him to listen to this or that. I want to know if he enjoyed that. Spam him on Twitter. Let him know that I sent you. Find the difference. This one is a banger. This one isn't so much of a banger. Here you go, guys. JJ's green screen from the latest More Simon video. Enjoy. Why is this a thing? You lot are so weird, man. You know what? We'll leave it at that. It's been your boy KSI. You lot are weird. I'll see you guys in a minute. Take care, please.
I got my bag on. This I don't want.
Sports Fuel is New Zealand's leading supplement company with thousands of products to suit all.
This episode of Moist Meter brought to you by Godslap Issue 2. Go to godslapbook.com to order your copy now.
Initiating moisture.
For years now, I've been like Ebenezer Scrooge when it comes to the first Avatar film. I've been a very harsh critic of it. It's the highest grossing film of all time, but I always feel like most people don't remember that much about it. Like, a lot of people probably couldn't even tell you the name of the species on Pandora. Like, I watched it and I thought it was a technological marvel, but everything outside of that was a little lackluster. Like, the actual meat of the movie wasn't all that tasty. And I rewatched it recently, and I still feel largely the same. The visuals hold up incredibly well. They have aged amazingly. It's still breathtaking. But again, my feelings were pretty much the same now, 13 years later. So going into Avatar: Way of the Water, I was coming in with pretty mild expectations. I expected it to be visually great, but nothing groundbreaking, because most movies have reached this plateau when it comes to visual effects. Like, they all just kind of look very good now. I didn't think Way of the Water would be able to somehow break through yet again and make a technological achievement, and I couldn't have been more wrong. Way of the Water blew me away. I came in with lukewarm expectations, that slapped those expectations right out of the park, but particularly when it comes to the visuals. I don't know how, but James Cameron has done it again. This movie is nuts. Like, the visuals are unreal. Somehow he has once again created a technological masterpiece, and I don't really get how he was able to accomplish that. Every scene in this film is gorgeous. Just absolutely gorgeous. I didn't even mind some of the cliche filler shit that they did, where they just like show some pretty stuff where a character's like holding some glowing organism in their hand and spinning it around underwater, because everything looks so goddamn realistic in the movie. I felt like I was watching a miracle unfold before me. So, absolutely crushed it in the visual effects, but this time around, I genuinely feel like he delivered a much better overall experience. Now, the plot is once again extremely simple. The first Avatar had a very simple plot, protect the forest. This one has an equally simple plot, protect your family and the sea. So, Jake Sully's now got a family, he's got a lot of kids now, and I really thought they were going to drop the ball here and flounder because they have so many characters they've introduced now because he's got a lot of kids. But somehow they actually do a good job of making you care about their fate, their outcome, where they're going to end up. Since he's already made the statement that this is only the second out of 5 movies coming, you now know that it's setting up for a lot going forward. And when I had first read that James Cameron, being the madman that he is, filmed the second, third, and fourth like all simultaneously, I was really concerned this film was going to be just all filler, like a Naruto filler arc where you watch it but it doesn't deliver anything substantial at all. It's just like setting up for future movies. But I'm happy to say that wasn't the case at all. Of course, everything clearly is setting up for the future, but it does so in a meaningful journey, not one that's just there setting up the pieces. It's not just a film introducing a ton of loose ends to wrap up later. It does a good job of being all self-contained in and of itself. So I really did appreciate that. I'm not going to get into spoilers, so a couple of my complaints I'm not going to be able to talk about directly, but I will say that they introduce a new character. He's in the trailer. His name's Spider. He's a human that's been raised by the Na'vi, and I actually don't think he's a good character at all right now. And not because I think the actor's bad or anything, or I think the concept of the character's bad. It's because I feel like they didn't really make his motivations as a character clear. Because Spider, for some reason, goes back and forth on sometimes he's helping the good guys, sometimes he's helping the bad guys, and then sometimes it doesn't really feel like he gives a fuck that much about the situations that are going on around him. Like, it just, he just keeps flip-flopping, and thus it makes his character a little confusing. I'm sure he's going to have a lot to do with the overall story down the line, but in this one, it was just a little bit of a head-scratcher, like, what does he actually want? What is he actually doing? But aside from him being rather weak, all of the other characters they introduce, I actually think they do a good job of fleshing out with the time they're given here. It's a 3-hour movie, but somehow it felt like an hour. Like, it really felt fast. Like, it didn't feel drawn out. Like, I actually felt like, you know, things were happening super quickly towards the end. The last hour of this film is absolutely amazing. The last hour is just non-stop, full-throttle action with like really interesting choreography that goes on that just keeps amping up in the insanity and the lunacy of what's happening, and it's beautiful. Like, I love the last hour of this film. But even the 2 hours that precede it, which, you know, of course are going to lead up to that final confrontation, are still interesting. Unlike the first film, like when you go back to the humans with Jake Sully and everyone, like, those moments I felt were boring. In here, with Way of the Water, when you have those slower moments where they're learning to ride and learning to breathe longer underwater, they're not boring. Like, I actually got invested, and things happen in there, like getting attacked by giant fucking sea monsters and shit. Like, there are still things that happen in there that make it interesting and keep you on edge wondering, okay, how is this going to play a role down the line? And all of it just works together pretty well. Not 100% of the time, though. There's definitely a bit of fat that could have been trimmed off of a couple of scenes that dragged on a little too long. Without getting into the weeds of it, I won't go into spoilers, but there are definitely moments where it's like, this is overstated its welcome a little bit. I think we can move on to the next thing. And another thing that kind of stood out to me that I wasn't too big of a fan of is Jake Sully as a character had a bit of a shift in this film compared to the first one, in both a positive and negative way. But overall, I feel like some of the decisions he makes were fucking stupid. Like, really dumb. And it's hard to get into those specifically without spoiling, but I will say he's a lot more cowardly in this film. Now, of course, that could be because now he has a family, so he has something to lose. He's not just, like, a loner or anything like that. But, like, he is completely controlled by fear for a large part of this movie, which leads to him being, like, a super hard ass with his kids pretty often, even in times where it doesn't make sense to be, like, an asshole. Like, he's very strict, especially with one of his sons, but in a way that sometimes just doesn't really make sense. Like, he's just being a dick for no reason. So there were just a couple of eyebrow-raising moments for me when it came to Jake's character and the way he interacted with his family from time to time, as well as some of his decisions. But it wasn't like bad, and I think by the end of the film, he's in a really like strong spot as a character. But yeah, there was some bumps along that road. Overall, though, I really did enjoy this a lot, and especially the soundtrack. Of course, the soundtrack I expected to be pretty good, and it was stellar here. Obviously. Another mention I'd like to make here, in Way of Water, Neytiri doesn't have nearly as big a role as she did in the first film, which of course you couldn't expect her to with how many characters have now entered the fold, but she got sidelined, like, pretty hard in this one. At least until the end. The end, she is fucking amazing. Like, I can't get into it because it'll absolutely be a spoiler. But up until the end, Neytiri just didn't play a crucial role in the film, I feel. And then all at once at the end, she really shines. Yeah, so plugging Avatar Way of Water into the moist meter, I'm gonna give it a pretty nice, clean 80%. I really did enjoy it. A lot of the complaints that I do have are complaints that I can't get into specifically here because I'm not trying to spoil it, and I really do recommend checking it out. Even if you didn't like the first one, I actually think this one has a much better chance of winning you over and selling you on the Avatar universe, because this does everything the first one aimed to do better. I never thought I'd watch a 3-hour film and ask for more immediately after, but I really am extremely excited to see the third one now. And it really did feel like it went by super quick. Like, I still can't even believe that was 3 hours. Because, like, the entire last hour is just an absolute non-stop ride of action, which was great. And he didn't pull any punches. James Cameron went whole hog. Fucking have limbs flying off of people and shit. Like, it went hard. So, I really did enjoy it. I think it was much better than the first one. A couple of hiccups here and there, but overall, I had a great time watching it. That's about it. Godslap is a comic book series we've been working on for a couple of years now. It's a hyper-violent, over-the-top sci-fi story about the beauty and destruction that slabs can cause. Issue 2 is out right now. It'd make a wonderful Christmas gift, so make sure to check it out at godslapbook.com. Right now we also have 3 variant covers that are in stock, but the second those sell out, those variant covers will never be restocked, so definitely make sure to pick up a copy today.
But yeah, eating disorder from cutting weight is a real problem.
Trust me, if high-level UFC fighters can't control themselves, Sean O'Malley, Paddy to Batty, if they can't do it, what chance do you have? Coach Greg, in today's video, Sean O'Malley's calling out Paddy Pimblett, saying guy must have an eating disorder. In case you don't know, these are high-profile UFC fighters. Sean O'Malley is one of the best fighters in the world, calling out Paddy Pimblett, and so this is being discussed on the Joe Rogan podcast. Joe Rogan saying, hey, these guys are cutting all kinds of weight. Is this leading to eating disorders? Sean O'Malley saying, yeah, of course it does. Paddy gets to 200 pounds, and it's actually 205, and he fights at 155. He says, look, imagine if I were going to 185 or 190 in my offseason, cutting to 135. It's not healthy.
When you're always dieting and cutting weight, do you think that makes you like more prone to doing that?
Dude, look at the reason Paddy the Batty gets as big as he is because it's like you get this mental disorder.
And so what happens is that competitive fighters are dieting so hard that after the fight, they have no control. They literally lose their minds. They're developing eating disorders, and they binge eat uncontrollably. They can't stop. Paddy Pimblett, the perfect example. He says he goes up to 200. It's actually 205, and then he has to cut 50 pounds to make his weight class. And so imagine just how unhealthy this is. Not just on the body, but also on the mind. I'm sure everyone can imagine that starving yourself on 15 to 1,800 calories, that can't be good. But then to binge, he said in the past he's eaten 8,000 calories a day. And so imagine, it's all or nothing.
I was just eating so clean to where right after, it's like I'll order 2 cheeseburgers, some appetizers, and just eat until I'm so uncomfortable and so much pain.
And so following a competition, you have no control. Your body, it takes over. You start eating and eating and eating, and it's not just till you're full, it's until you're uncomfortable. And just imagine why. Think of it on an evolutionary point. You're starving yourself, and so your body, once it is allowed to find food again, is thinking, you're going to eat until you can. Until you can't stop, kind of like a dog. You binge, you overeat, because the body is trying to protect you from yourself. It doesn't know that there's food in abundance, and so every chance I get to make you hungrier than last time, to make you want to keep eating, to stop putting the fork down, I'm gonna do it. And so hunger hormones, your mental outlook on things, it's all you think about. All you want to do is binge eat.
They took 36 men, they put them in a lab for 6 months, and they starved them, like really starved them, because they wanted to know what happens to the human body when we significantly decrease our calories and lose a lot of weight.
And so in that study,
Trying to
they
figure out
take
the
36
quick
people,
cut
they
for this.
starve them, and then they want to see what happens after. And what does happen after? They gain even more weight than they lost in the first place. And why? Well, because the body is in self-defense mode. It's thinking, there's no way I want to let you get that starved again. Not gonna happen. And so it makes you hungrier. You keep eating. You develop an unhealthy an obsession with food. Imagine, has that ever happened to you? Have you ever dieted before? What's it like when the diet ends? You're starved all the time. I've done 59 bodybuilding competitions. Every single time the diet's over, you want to binge. Most people, they don't talk about it. So many IFBB pros, they're binge eating, they have eating disorders. And from my research, 25% of people who compete in sports involving weight classes, they have an eating disorder. That's 1 out of 4. And so is it shocking to see that Patty, he starves himself to make a weight class and then he binge eats and gains all this weight? Of course not. It's normal. It's what the body's trying to do to prevent you from undereating. Makes you hungrier and gain more weight. But then guess what?
You need a hold.
The UFC fight comes up
Very,
again,
very
you then
slightly.
have to starve yourself, and
Just
so
hold
the vicious
this
cycle
hold.
continues. You yo-yo diet each and every
It's
time.
not even a hold,
and it
it's
gets
just
worse
kinda like a
and
heavy
worse
flip.
and worse, and so many people eventually end up with an eating disorder.
I've been doing a really good
Yeah, I
job
think
not
they do.
overeating. This each time it gets a little bit better, and it's a knowledge thing and a discipline thing.
Each time that Sean cuts and regains weight, he says it's a little bit easier. He gets used to it, he knows the struggles, and he learns from it. You learn which foods you can eat and which ones you can't. My advice, keep the trigger foods out of the house. If you just finished a diet and you have junk food or foods that you really love that are high in calories, high calorie dense foods, you're gonna overeat on them. Be proactive. Realize it's very hard to stop overeating.
I have a meal prep company in Arizona, all organics, that makes my food
Oh, that's
throughout
great.
the entire fight camp.
But you at home, you probably don't have a chef. You probably don't have a meal prep company doing it. And so what can you do? Well, my advice, eat low-calorie dense foods. Exactly the foods that are in my cookbook. And why do you think I developed that? Remember, I've been competing and dieting, and no, not in the UFC, but in other sports, bodybuilding and powerlifting. And so I know exactly what it's like to starve and then regain the weight after. I've done it 59 times for bodybuilding competitions alone.
I think it's been a month now since the fight, but not eating as much cheese or eating as much bread if I go out to eat, just because I know that causes inflammation.
He's learned about that, and so for you, you need to learn what foods are good for you and which ones are not. For me, I eat a lot of popcorn. It prevents me from binging on chips and crackers, pretzels, all those kind of things. Once you experiment and find the foods that work best for you, you can then get better. It gets easier. But the problem is people don't know what to do, and with knowledge comes power. And remember, I've written a book on exactly how to lose weight and keep it off, and not just once, for the rest of your life. It's called The Circle Diet Book. It's my life's work explaining exactly what to do right away, and it's very easy to read. It might take you 6 hours. Remember, I was a school teacher. Made sure it's easy, that you understand it, and you can apply these things in your life right away. Strongly recommend you click the link in the description. Consider getting the cookbook or the Circle Diet Book. It's going to help tremendously with your weight loss goals.
But yeah, eating disorder from cutting weight is a real problem.
Trust me, if high-level UFC fighters can't control themselves, Sean O'Malley, Paddy the Batty, if they can't do it, what chance do you have?
If I fought at my natural weight class, I'd fight at 155. If I didn't cut weight, walk around 58, 59, whatever, I'd fight at 155.
Sean O'Malley, he fights at 135. Remember, the guy's over 6 feet tall, and regular weight, he's around 158. And so it makes sense if he cut 3-4 pounds and fought at 155. But if he fought at 155, he would be fighting against much larger opponents because everyone's cutting weight. And so he says, I probably should fight at 145, but I'm even better at 135. But that diet, to get to that extent, it feels like I'm going to die. He has to convince himself, no, you will survive. It's horrible, but you can do it. These guys are fighting for millions of dollars. How much are you making? And so think of it. What chance do you have to starve yourself on these diets if you just go out on your own? These guys have all the professionals, the meal prep companies, dietitians, experts, coaches. What do you got? You have me on a YouTube video telling you what to do. And so the more videos you watch, the more knowledge you get. Remember, knowledge comes power. And so I strongly suggest get the Circle Diet book, get the cookbook, learn from my videos, and don't make the same mistakes that I have when I was young.
Cutting to 35 is hard. You feel like you're dying. Your heart is pounding. You're laying in bed.
You kind of are dying.
You 100% are dying.
Sean's literally saying you 100% are diet, and Joe Rogan agrees. And trust me, I've been there. I've cut over 20 pounds in 24 hours, making weight for powerlifting. It feels like death. You think it's hard to be hungry? You should see what it's like to be so thirsty you think you're gonna die. Not exaggerate, not stretching the truth. I've gone to weight classes, nearly passed out. I've left weigh-ins at powerlifting events with no shoes on. Didn't know where I was, disorientated. Losing so much water to make the weight class that you just don't know where you are.
Obviously 55 would be the easiest, but I wish more guys would. But then again, like Aljo, he weighs how much right now?
I don't know.
160 to
How
8,
about
170.
Davidson?
And it's not just the lightweights. Guys who are winning at 185, they're weighing over 220 pounds, cutting to 185. Imagine, they're 40 pounds over the weight class a week after they win the title. You win the middleweight title, yay, put on 40 pounds. These guys are monsters. And so if you don't cut ridiculous amounts of weight, well, your opponent is. And so if you don't do it, you're at a huge disadvantage. And so no wonder people develop eating disorders. No wonder Paddy the Batty is so big in his off season. He yo-yo diets year after year because his body's making him. In my opinion, it is an eating disorder. You can debate me on that. You go from eating 8,000 calories a day for a while to 1,500 calories, up and down 50 pounds every single time you fight. That is not healthy. That is not a proper way to eat. And so you can say, yeah, but it's for a sport, it's for this and that. Yeah, sure you can. You can argue that, but you can say the same thing about a model. She doesn't have an eating disorder. She just starves herself because she has to be a swimsuit model. Is it not the same thing? Is the reason you're doing it, is that really making an excuse? Does that really mean you're not struggling? That it's not doing damage to you both mentally and physically?
I try to tell myself, like, we know we're not going to actually die, we're going to feel like that or whatever, but...
And so I think it's important to understand that even the best athletes in the world are struggling with binge eating disorders, yo-yo dieting, starvation diets, and fluctuations in body weight. That they're literally developing eating disorders because of the weight classes that they're trying to get to. And so for you, you're struggling to get to single-digit body fat, and you get there, what do you think is going to happen after? You're probably going to give up on that diet, regain all the weight, and then some, and then go through the yo-yo dieting period again. They've done studies on this. They starve someone for too long, guess what happens? They regain all the weight, they can't stop thinking about food, it becomes an unhealthy obsession with diet, exercise, and so on. You look in the mirror and feel fat. So many YouTubers, famous fitness model influencers, they don't like the way they look. All they see is the fat. You're thinking, that's my dream physique. They're thinking, I am so fat, I need to keep losing weight. And so please, don't take it so serious. Love your body for yourself. Stop being obsessed with getting too lean. Remember, 15% body fat for men, 25% for women, perfectly healthy. There's no reason to strive to try and get single-digit body fat because even if you do, probably going to rebound and gain more weight than last time. And so don't forget, please pick up the cookbook and the Circle Diet book. Let me know in the comment section, what do you think of all this? Have you struggled in the past? Can't wait to read your answers. Subscribe, click the bell button, comment for the algorithm, watch at least one of those 2 bloops. Follow me on Instagram, Greg Doucette, IPB Pro, and until next time, I am out.
Wait a minute, would it be be easier to skip that orb? This orb, do you think it would be easier to skip that? It might be. Yeah.
It's good. It's crazy. Could be. It's good.
How you doing?
I've done it 50 times.
First rodeo.
Come on! Come on, Chris! Come on, two more! Come on! Let's go! Finish strong!
Oh, so close. Oh, that was closest yet.
Sorry, skill.
These are all the secrets.
One potato?
That's it. Every 27 minutes.
A pound of olive oil.
Yeah. There you go. That's it.
Beautiful. They've done 40 different ways.
Just to keep up the diversity so that Mr. Bumstead can stay bougie.
Bougie, yeah. Anyways, what is up, YouTube? Mustache is in full effect. Weigh-ins are in, how many hours away are we? 3 hours, probably 4 hours. It's been that long everything takes. But it's been an interesting day. We woke up under 240, and it's just been about keeping me there all day. So lowered my water, lowered my sodium, and literally tracking everything that's going in my body, from the time to the grams to the ounces to the water, everything that's going in me. And then every time I eat or drink, I take off all my clothes, I step on the scale, and then we see, oh, can you eat a little more? Can you drink a little more? And just balancing that out pretty much. Honey, just being a wizard right now, and just bouncing around. Courtney's been a chef all day, cooking steak, salmon, rice, fish, potatoes, anything you can imagine. Right now, you saw us dicing up potatoes in different ways. We weighed it out. We're gonna see which one sucks the most liquid out of it. So
Kind of
it's
as funny as we're bored too.
yeah, a little bit. But the more carbs I can eat right now with the minimal amount of liquid, the better. So we're just trying to dry the shit out of it. If I had an air fryer, it'd be amazing. But I did not get an air fryer at Target. Next time we will get an air fryer because air fryer potatoes is the best. But you know, we're 3 hours away right now. Feeling pretty good. I've literally haven't left the hotel room. I've been like sleeping, shaved my beard, sleeping, eating, kind of stretching, moving around, trying to like make sure that I'm not too stagnant with the food in me, so that I can actually move through and have a good poop and everything. So yeah, that's pretty much what's been going on all day, and we're gonna keep doing this till 8 p.m. Make weight, eat some food. We're gonna have a late night workout after in the hotel. Hit some biceps, little arms, just whatever finishing up we need to do, and then tomorrow the fun begins. So stay tuned.
Wait, I thought you're not doing shit tomorrow.
Sorry?
I thought you're not doing shit tomorrow.
I got a tan, press conference, and maybe another tan.
Oh, sorry,
and
that's Friday.
Athlete meet and greet, tan. A lot of shit going on tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow's a very, very loaded day.
Yeah, the hardest day.
Yeah.
The meet and greets are so difficult. A long day and then a meet and greet at like 9 p.m. and you're just like fully depleted. Like, oh.
Yeah.
So
Luckily, you have an extra day to rest.
yeah.
We're all
I've woken up like swollen after standing there for 3 hours meeting people, and like people get mad at you if you leave at like 10 o'clock. I'm like, I gotta compete. You're here to watch me look good, you know? But it's all part of the game.
Yeah, it's hard to come up with an excuse that I spent too much time at the meet and greet. That's why I got watery.
Right? Yeah. See you later.
Ounces. 8 ounces for that potato.
Oh shit, did PewDiePie delete his subreddit? Damn. Trying to find a good good video. We can do this.
Yeah,
say what
and-
you-
yeah, you can be a man or a woman. That's your choice, and you can change it whenever you want. So you're a man or a woman, and so it isn't obvious who's better off in a situation like that. It's in fact, I think most people who are old and rich would trade it for young and poor fairly damn quickly.
Well, that's why people really get angry when they see young rich people.
Yeah, I know that's just too much to bear.
Yeah, like a young, rich,
Yeah.
famous rapper, like what's that fella? This 17-year-old, Lil Pump. How about that? Famous, 17.
But you know
I was in high school when I was 17.
Well, the funny thing too, though, is that you know even with people who have that sort of, let's call it good fortune, you know, independent of their talent, you don't have to scratch beneath the surface very far, even in successful people's lives, until you find a pretty decent vein of tragedy. You know, and so that jealousy of the successful is also based on a really unidimensional view of exactly what constitutes success. You know, you see the trappings, whatever they might be. Let's say it's a yacht and more money than you know what to do with, and you assume, well, that's going to put that person at the pinnacle of a satisfying life. But there's no shortage of dreadfully unhappy and addicted celebrities. And it isn't obvious always that more money is good for people. You know, I mean, you say, oh, that's a problem I'd like to have. It's like, look, fair enough. I mean, there are worse problems, but celebrity and fame and fortune are also not that easy to deal with, and they come with their own pitfalls. Plus, there's lots of things they don't protect you against. You know, people still get divorced, and they still get sick, and they still die, and their parents still get Alzheimer's, and all of that. Like, the fundamental tragic elements of life are still in place.
One of the interesting things about people that are jealous of other people that are extremely successful is that you're missing one of the core lessons of competition. One of the core lessons of competition is to be inspired by those who are more successful and not to try to chip them down and take away their accomplishments because they don't make you feel good.
Yeah.
The people that are piss poor at competition are always the ones that are trying to diminish the accomplishments of those who are extremely successful. You see this in sports fans. If you see a loser, fat sports fan talking about what a piece of shit LeBron James is because he dropped the ball or he missed a shot, like this, the extreme reaction that they could have to someone who's extraordinarily successful is almost always in direct proportion to how much of a failure they are in their own life. And that's one of the reasons why, in contrast, it looks so ridiculous.
Yeah, well, that's part of the danger. I would say that's part of the danger of the entire identity politics movement is that, that reasonable care for the dispossessed, which we already talked about, is easily contaminated by hatred and resentment for people who are not only successful, but who are... The most annoying person who's successful is the person who deserves it, not the person who doesn't deserve it. Because you can write the person who doesn't deserve it off.
Right, the lottery winner.
You can say, oh yeah, well, he just got lucky. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But then you see the person who's broken themselves in half and, come out of a really pathological background and has been successful, and you're uselessly wasting your life away.
Yes.
That's the sort of person that you really don't like, because they cast you in a very dim light.
So this is where competition is so important, because the person that has a background in competition, has been involved in competition, sees a person who's busted their ass and become something really extraordinary, and it's incredibly inspirational. And you look to those people and you want to read their biographies, and you want to watch documentaries on them, because it literally gives you fuel. Whereas the person who shies away from competition, is afraid of their own insecurities and failures, and really has never tested themselves, those are the ones that find these people extremely distasteful, because when they put themselves in comparison to these incredible people, they come up short.
Yeah, well, every
so they find
ideal,
excuses.
every ideal is a judge.
Yes.
And so what's the answer to that? No ideals. That's a stupid suggestion. No, it certainly doesn't, because then it leaves people without any meaning in their life. So
well, I think it speaks to what we were talking about earlier, that we need adversity. That we need adversity, we need difficulty, we need struggle, you need a weight to carry. And if you don't have any of this, you do not get your character tested, you do not advance in your own perception of who you are in this world, and how you engage with all the other people around you.
You don't call out what's best in you.
Yes.
And then you can't live without that. You need that. You need that. And the trick seems to be that voluntary acceptance of the adversity. See, that's one of the things that I think is core to the mythos of Christianity, because there's an idea that you should pick up your cross and stumble uphill, and that's really what that means, is that you set your eyes on some high level vision, the city of God on the hill, whatever that happens to be, and then you take the burden, whatever burden you're capable of lifting, which is obviously going to be a burden of suffering, at least to some degree, and you carry that voluntarily. That's the trick, is that. And then you say, well, you need a purpose in your life. It's like, well, look, there's a lot of problems around you in the world. You have some problems even that bother you, right? Personally, they seem to call out to you, those problems. Maybe those are your problems. Those are the problems you should solve. And those, I think, are the call to adventure. It's like, there's a problem, it bugs me. Okay, do something about it. That's your problem.
There's a certain amount that you can tolerate. I mean, I think it's like weight training. There's a certain amount where it becomes detrimental, where you overtrain, your body's breaking down. There's a certain amount of problems that you have in your life that are extremely beneficial, because through going through these problems, sorting them out, you build your spirit, you build your character. And if you don't accomplish anything and you never encounter any problems, you are this gelatinous, soft, atrophied soul, and you don't have the intestinal fortitude or the spirit or the human potential has not been developed to the point where you can overcome adversity. The only way to overcome adversity is to face it.
So that optimum that you were talking about, so I've really been interested in the neurophysiology of the sense of meaning. Because neurophysiology, because the meaning, the feeling of meaning is an instinct.
Right.
It's not a thought. It's not a secondary consequence of rational processes. It's way deeper than that. It's something that drives rationality itself. So now you were just
vary amongst people.
Definitely, but it varies in this way, as far as I can tell. So imagine, as you said, that there's an optimal load. Right, you exceed that, and to your detriment. And you see that in the weight room. You pull a muscle, you'll hurt yourself. You can injure yourself very badly. Right, you can take yourself out for the count. But then if you work too little, well, then there's no gain in it. You have to find that thin edge where you're competent at what you're doing, but you're pushing yourself. That's going to be where meaning lies. That's what meaning tells people. It says you're on the edge where you're competent and out of undue danger, but pushing yourself enough so that you're continually developing. That's the instinct of meaning. And that looks to me like it's a consequence of the interaction between the right and the left hemispheres, and a consequence of the interaction between the negative emotion systems, anxiety and pain, that regulate you, that protect you from harm, and the exploratory and play systems that drive you forward. You want the exploratory and play systems to drive you forward, but then they're regulated by these negative emotions so you don't hurt yourself. And if you get that optimally right, then that's the point of maximal challenge. And that makes you really alert because your positive emotion is functioning. That's what's driving you forward. This is worth doing. And your negative emotions are alert too, saying, yeah, but be awake and be careful. And you know what that's like in the weight room. You know, you're lifting something that's at the edge of your ability. You've got a spotter. You want to push, and you can barely do it, and you want to make sure that you're not going to, like, pull your arm down and rip the hell out of your muscle. But you're right on that edge, and that's the place of maximal gain. And that sense of meaning, that's what puts you on the border between chaos and order. Right? Because too much order means you're just practicing what you already know. And then you stultify and stagnate. And too much chaos means you better look out because you're going to hurt yourself. You're pushing yourself beyond your limits. You stay right on that edge. That's where there's maximal meaning. And you're wired for that.
That edge is
push it.
Push it.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I recommend to young people, especially true for people in their 20s, is that you should push yourself beyond your limits of tolerance in your 20s to find out where it is. How much can you work? How disciplined can you become? Like, can you work 12 hours a day? Can you work 8 hours a day? Can you work 3 hours a day? Like, flat out. Where's your limit? And how much work can you do, and how much socialization? You should find out. Push yourself past and then back off to that point where it's optimally sustainable.
That's what a lot of people do, isn't it? I mean, they party too much when they're in their 20s. They make a lot of mistakes.
It's what
like
they're doing, and I would say in sort of a haphazard way, right? Because there's that instinct to go out there and do more.
Right.
But it's unregulated, and it's not as self-conscious as it might be. It's good to know that it's good to think about that as a goal. It's like you're trying to discover what your limitations are when you're in your 20s, so that you can hit that edge, so that you can sustain yourself across the decades. And so, yeah, because you don't want to have too much fun, right? Too much fun takes you out. You don't want to be the oldest guy at the disco. You know, it's not fun being the 40-year-old at the singles bar, precisely. So you want to make sure that what you're doing is age appropriate, and you want to push yourself in every direction that you can, but you should be doing that with an aim in mind. It's like you're trying to make yourself into a better and more competent person. And so some discipline along with the fun is a good idea. So to take care of yourself and the people around you, that's one of the things I recommended to people, and I've had quite a few people actually tell me that they've done this, interestingly enough. I said, well, one thing you could aim at, if you had any sense when you were young, is to be the most reliable person at your father's funeral. And so I think that's a good challenge, and I had a bunch of people come up to me in this last tour and tell me that that's exactly what they did. These were often young guys, you know, like before 20. Said my dad died suddenly, or, you know, he died after a year's illness, and it was just taking me out. And no wonder, you know. I said, I was listening to your lectures. You said you want to be the most reliable person at the funeral because everyone else is grieving, and what the hell else are you going to do? He said that's what they tried to do, and that got him through it. So, no, that's part of that, picking up that load as far as I'm concerned. You get a little self-respect out of that too, in a real sense, right? Because, you know, you're this sort of sad, suffering creature that's capable of a fair bit of malevolence. But if you find out that you can carry a heavy load and take care of yourself and have a little leftover for some other people, then you can wake up at 3 in the morning and think, well, man, I could be worse.
And this is not a political perspective. This is a positive, constructive way of looking at how to navigate the world. But when you break down these sort of behavior types, there's the people that generally support socialism or socialist ideas, or they're anti-competition, versus people that are pro-pushing yourself. They fall into these right-wing, left-wing sort of paradigms in this really weird way. That, I mean, I don't...
I think that's especially true on the radical ends, but I think you get that on the radical right too, because you get people who are collectivist in their fundamental orientation, you know, and they're trying to take undue credit for who their racial ancestors were, or they're okay. What I would say with the political issue is that I think that you can build decent, responsible people who are on the middle right of the spectrum and the middle left, you know, because I think that you can have left-wing political beliefs that are genuinely aimed at aid to the dispossessed without being resentful of the hierarchies. and without contaminating it with jealousy for the successful. It's hard, right? You have to, because when I worked for the NDP when I was a kid, that was the Socialist Party in Canada, the leaders, some of the leaders were people like that. Like a lot of the low-level party functionary types, they were the activist types that you still see today, and they're mostly resentful. I didn't like them at all. But some of the leaders were genuine advocates for the working class, you know, and they had their flaws, obviously, but they put their money where their mouth was, and they were trying to ensure that the hierarchies were open to advancement for let's say, the common person, so to speak, the person who's stacked up at the bottom, or for their children, which might even be more important, you know, so that the hierarchies remain open to genuine competition based on competence, which would be a perfectly reasonable thing for the left to insist on, right? Is that let's bloody well make sure that it's a fair game, and so that people don't get locked out of movement forward because of arbitrary positions of power. And that's a reasonable part of the discussion. So I think if you build better people, you can build better people on the left and on the right.
And people that are going to appreciate that rules to the game are better for everyone. They're better for the people that win. They're better for the people that are coming up. They're better for everyone.
Yes, if
you
that's
have
right.
to have real structure and real rules.
Yes.
And that you're better off being a guy like Wayne Gretzky.
Yes.
Better off being a guy who's respected, who plays the game correctly and just does his best and really truly becomes a champion and loved by all because of it.
You're better off in every way.
Right.
Right, and that's the most stable. The other thing that's so cool about that, so imagine this. This is the antidote to moral relativism. Okay, so the first thing is that there are real problems, and hierarchical organizations can offer real solutions, socially and personally. So you can confront the problems courageously and you can solve them. So that's real. It ameliorates suffering and limits malevolence. And so there's nothing morally relative about that. The second is that sense of meaning that we discussed. That's not some philosophical second-order consequence of thinking. It's way deeper than that. That sense of meaning tells you when you're Vygotsky, the Russian psychologist, called that the zone of proximal development, which I believe is where the phrase the zone came from. And so in the zone of proximal development, this is what adults do with children, little kids that are learning to talk. Adults automatically talk to little children who are learning to talk at a level that slightly exceeds their current vocabulary. They do that without even knowing it. And that puts those kids in the zone, right? Because if you just talk baby talk to kids, then all they learn is baby talk. And if you just talk like an adult, then they don't understand a word you're saying. So you find this happy medium in between where the kid mostly understands what you're talking about and that you're pulling them forward. So that puts them in the zone. And that's a meaningful zone. And so you can feel the operation of that zone in your own life. That's what the Taoists are on about, because they say, well, Tao is the way, right? And that's the pathway between chaos and order. That's meaning. And you can feel that in your life when you're deeply engaged in something. Like, we have deeply engaging conversations, okay, which is part of the reason that we keep having them, and I think why they're popular. And we're not paying attention to how the clock is ticking or how time is flowing or even to the fact that we're doing what we're doing. We're just having a conversation. And it's meaningful, it's engaged, it keeps our eyes focused and our senses concentrated on what's happening. And the reason for that is that there's enough information flowing between us so that we're being slightly transformed as a consequence of the discussion, right? So we're both comfortable, we trust each other, we trust that the conversation is aimed at something that's of mutual benefit. We trust each other to tell the truth to the degree that we're capable of doing that. And then when you engage in this exchange of information, and to the degree that it's breaking you down a little bit and building you up in a different way, that's a little death and rebirth. There's constant little deaths and rebirths in a meaningful conversation. Then that keeps you alive and functioning. And that focuses you, like, that speaks to you so deeply that focus happens without any consciousness. And that's... meaning. And that's that line between chaos and order. And that's real. That has nothing, and I would say, here's another thing that's cool. So that line between chaos and order, that's the same thing that's happening when you're playing a game properly, right? Because you're in the game and you're exercising your skill, but you're pushing it. But you're pushing it in a way that's also a benefit to your teammates and to the progression of the game as such, and to being a better general player. You're doing all that at the same time. And you're evolved with enough natural intelligence so that the sum total output of your nervous system says to you, you're in the right place at the right time doing the right thing. And that's what makes your life meaningful.
Oh,
and
wait, I did it.
And I think it's more real than anything
I did it, and then
I think it's more
I killed
real
myself
than
on
suffering.
purpose.
I think it's more real than malevolence, because it's the antidote
Like, I went
to
up
both
there
of
on
those.
purpose.
And so the whole moral relativism issue for me is a non-starter. It's just wrong. There's lots of ways of interpreting the world, but there aren't very many ways of interpreting it optimally. And you can feel when you're doing that. It makes you stronger. And then the people that come to me after my talks and say, well, you know, I've been putting my life together, I've developed a vision, I've been trying to be more responsible, I've been trying to be more honest and put my relationships together. They're all sparkly-eyed because of this, or crying sometimes, because it's really had an impact on them at a deep level. They think, oh wow, this actually works. It's like, yeah, it actually works. It's real. It's real. And I would say as well that that's associated with the idea, the deep Western idea of the logos, which is meaning in action and speech. So, you know, if we have a conversation that's meaningful, then that's a manifestation of the spirit of the logos, and that's the thing that destroys and recreates at the same time. Because you learn something, it destroys a little presupposition that you had that was erroneous, and replaces it with something that's healthier. And every time you have a meaningful conversation, that happens. It's like a little tweak. Now, I wasn't quite right here. Click. That moves, and something new takes its place. So, and that's a little death and rebirth instead of the catastrophic death and rebirth that you might have to have if you weren't paying attention. So that's all tied together. That's all tied together with that phenomenon of meaning. And that's the same as the adoption of responsibility. That all ties together so nicely.
Yeah, the concept of meaning, like what is important, that it's so huge to people, but so fleeting. It's so difficult to, like, what is meaning? Well, you know, there's the simple ones, right? Like family and loved ones and companionship and community and finding something that you enjoy doing that, you know, you can do that seems bigger than you or bigger than yourself. But meaning, like the meaning of life. What is meaning? It's one of the things that gives people so much existential angst. And I think it's the cause of a lot of despair, because there's...
You can question it.
Yes.
But the thing is that that's one of the dangers of rationality, is that, see, the Egyptians associated, the Catholics did this to some degree too, they associated rationality with a proclivity to malevolence. Partly because rationality tends to fall in love with its own productions. Intelligence has this like inbuilt arrogance. And the Egyptians in particular were really insightful. They tried to replace the idea of intelligence as the highest virtue with the idea of attention as the highest virtue. This is something Aldous Huxley knew. He wrote a book called Island. Island was an island that was populated had a lot of birds on it, and the birds could talk, and all they did was say, pay attention, to remind everybody on the island to pay attention all the time. But you can undermine your sense of meaning and you can question it, but the best thing to do is to actually pay attention to when it manifests itself, because it's a phenomenon like color or like love or like beauty. It exists. It isn't something you create. It's something that you discover, and you can discover.
I can get up
you
to
just
the,
have to watch.
here to the way,
like you're ignorant about yourself. You think, okay, well, I'm going to. I told my clinical clients to do this, and my students is watch yourself for 2 weeks. Just watch like you don't know who you are, and notice when you're doing something that you're engaged in. It's like you'll see it. Maybe it's only 10 minutes because your life is pretty out of balance, but you'll see that, oh man, I was engaged in something there for 10 minutes. It's like, why? What did you do that was right, that engaged you? You were in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing for a few minutes. What was it? What were the preconditions? There's this line in the New Testament. Christ says, the kingdom of God is spread across the earth, but men do not see it. And that's what it refers to, is that you wander into paradise now and then when you're engaged, when you're deeply engaged in something, but you don't notice it. You don't think, oh, look, I'm in the right place and everything's working out right now. It means I got it right somehow. And then I need to practice being there more and more and more, which is well, that's the appropriate thing to try to practice. And that's to come to some negotiated, what would you call it? It's to come to a negotiation with that intrinsic sense of meaning and to realize it as a fact rather than just as an opinion or something that's secondary. Because it's
an
not.
alien concept for people, though, to be so aware of who they are and what they're doing that they can recreate that. So when they do feel that feeling of meaning, that they could figure out a way to get back into that state, and what were all the extenuating circumstances, and where's my head at? What caused me to have this feeling like things were right?
Yes, well, it's like someone gives you a gift, and you think, well, I'd like that gift again. It's like, yeah, well, you have to figure out what it was that you did to deserve it, so to speak. And yeah, I know it requires a fair bit of careful reflection, but it also requires that ignorance, as you have to think, well, I don't know who I am. I'm going to find some things meaningful. What are they? They might not even be things you want to find meaningful. They might be things that you might even be ashamed of. You know, because sometimes people are interested in things that they don't think that they should be interested in. Like maybe you'll have a guy who was this is kind of a cliche, but who was socialized to be a real tough guy, and he finds out that he's kind of interested in art or aesthetics. It's like, well, he's ashamed of that because maybe it's too feminine or whatever. Well, it doesn't matter, because that's actually speaking. That's actually something that's speaking to him from the core of his genuine being. He's going to have to pursue that. Or you might find, that someone who's really agreeable and kind of a pushover stands up to someone just once at work, says what they really think, and then they realize afterwards, wow, that was exactly right. Then they think, oh my God, I decided when I was a little kid, maybe they had a harsh father, and they decided when they were 4, I'm never going to be angry in my whole life. There's something wrong with aggression. So they've gone out of their way their whole life to be free of conflict. Then they find out that one day they stand up for themselves, that whole domain that they'd parsed off as inappropriate actually contains exactly what they need to put themselves together. But you find what you need where you least want to look. That's the old alchemical dictum. Inster qualinus invenitur, right?
I want to talk to you about activists, because it's something that you brought up earlier, saying that you find them unappealing. Like, I want to know what you think the motivation of a lot of these, like particularly radical left-wing activists that want to shut down lectures and scream people down in these auditoriums. What do you think the motivation of these people is, and what do you think is the root of it?
Well, I think that it's a quick route to moral virtue. It's actually really hard to put yourself together, and you have to do that in ways that you can't trumpet. Because most of the things that are wrong with you are kind of low, what would you call it, second rate and embarrassing. You're all your stupid little habits and your proclivity to procrastinate and all the things that you're minorly ashamed of. And then you have to work on those slowly, because the probability that you're going to be able to fix them quickly is low. And you can't really brag about it because it's so embarrassing just to admit that they exist to begin with that you can hardly brag about it. And it's sort of painstaking private work. And you don't get a lot of quick social status for it. It's effortful, embarrassing, humbling, and difficult. And then you can do something like be an activist, and you get all that public acclaim for being on the good side with no effort whatsoever. And so it's a plus.
Do you think that there's any motivation at all to try to make the world a better place?
Yes. I think there's some.
That's part of it.
Sure. Well,
but you think it's flavored by this desire to broadcast your virtue?
Yes, because it's very difficult to make the world a better place. That's the thing. Young people have a messianic impulse. That's another thing that was documented by Piaget. That there's a stage, in late adolescence where you want to make the world a better place. I would say that's probably part of the impulse to, establish a permanent relationship and have a family and take care of people, and to take on some of the burden of life. It's the psychological precursor to that. And it's reasonable for smart young people to be concerned about broader philosophical issues if they tilt in that direction as well. But it's all too easy for that to be pathologized into resentment for those who seem to have more unfairly, and also to take the easy route out. And there aren't easy routes. there are only difficult routes to doing useful things, and it's better just to do that. And then, so I think that there's some impulse to, you know, there's some wish that things could be less unfair and that fewer people could suffer. But it's kind of a low-level virtue, that reflexive compassion. You know, I'm not saying it's without merit, because that compassion is the basis for the ability to take care of people who are ill and infants and so forth.
Feel it's low level? Like, where is that?
It's not thought through. Things are complicated. It's hard to make complicated systems work better, and it's really easy to make them work worse.
What about activists that want to shut down certain speakers, like someone who's, in my opinion, fairly innocuous in terms of the like? Here's one: Christina Hoff Sommers. I don't see a good argument for shutting her down. She's so polite. She's a feminist. She's well read.
Yeah.
She's a really nice person.
Janice Fimenko is like that too in Canada.
It
Same
just
sort of person.
doesn't make sense that people would shout her down, yet they do.
Oh yeah,
they
well,
shout her down.
You know,
they say horrible things about her. They mischaracterize her in a really brutal way that it completely invalidates their argument or their opposition to her. To anyone that's paying attention to what she said.
Oh well, a lot of it is also just immature acting out.
Yes.
You know, and there's an arrogance to
tolerated
it.
in some
I know.
Very, very strange way.
Yeah, it is. Well, yeah, it's part of our doubt, I suppose, about authority and about our willingness to assume that all authority is contaminated by power.
It's sanctioned heckling too.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're doing a play, you know, or a musical, or you're singing a song. Someone just decides to start screaming out. Well, that person's an asshole. But if you're espousing an opinion, and that person decides to scream out, and they do so under the guise of moral virtue.
Yeah. Well, it's undeserved access to power.
Yes.
You know, and it's no wonder that the radical leftists in particular concentrate on power. Everything's about power. Well, then it's okay if they use power as part of their means of expression. It's like, well, you're just playing power games. It's perfectly reasonable, even appropriate for me to play power games because, you know, I'm oppressed compared to you. If everything's power, then everybody gets to yell.
Right.
And there's no... One of the things I realized about recently as well is that there isn't a debate about free speech. Exactly. Not the way that we think about it, you know, because there's the classical defense of free speech. So the classical defense of free speech is that it's better for both of us if we're able to exchange our opinions because I have the opportunity to learn from you and you have the opportunity to learn from me and you have the opportunity to learn from your own mistakes and social feedback, and so do I. And negotiation beats war. Okay, so that's kind of the classical... Now, but that's predicated on some assumptions, and those are you're an autonomous being, you're capable of formulating an opinion that's actually unique to you, and that in dialogue we can mutually modify each other's unique opinions in a way that produces a mutually harmonious and beneficial outcome. That's all the predicate. Well, the people who are opposed to free speech, you see, it's not that they're trying to shut down people whose opinions are different than theirs exactly. It's that they're opposed to the idea that free speech exists. It's a way deeper problem. Because at the bottom of the postmodernist mess is the following assumption, is that, well, there's no one way of interacting with the world that's preferable to any other way. And so what people do is organize themselves into hierarchies of power and then struggle for dominance within the hierarchies, and then the hierarchies struggle between each other. So it's a landscape of warring hierarchies. That's all it is. And you think that you're a person and that you have an opinion, but you're not. You're just the mouthpiece of your privileged hierarchy. And so am I. And it's incommensurate if we're from different hierarchies. There isn't a you talking to a me that could come to an agreement. There's just you acting as a mouthpiece for your power and me acting as a mouthpiece for my power. And so, since I'm part of my group and I want to win because it's all about power, then why the hell would I ever want you to talk? It's not like I have anything to learn from you, or even that learning is possible, or even that there are two people having a discussion. There's nothing but the mouthpiece of power. There's two mouthpieces of power warring. And so why should I listen to you? I'll just shut you down, because then I win. And so this free speech debate isn't about whose opinion should be allowed within, you know, an overarching framework where free speech is a real thing. It's a debate about whether there's such a thing as free speech at all. The radical postmodernist types, they deny even that there's such a thing as an autonomous individual in any way. You're just the nexus of economic forces, economic and social forces. You're entirely socially constructed. There's no you. These are deep criticisms. Like I've made this case before, that the postmodern types, although they have to ally themselves with the Marxists for reasons that we don't have to go into, they are going after things that are so fundamental you can't believe it. There is no autonomous individual in the postmodern world. That's a modernist or an Enlightenment viewpoint. Or a Christian viewpoint, or a Judeo-Christian viewpoint, or maybe an Abrahamic religion viewpoint. Who the hell knows? It might be that deep. You're the nexus of sociological forces. There's no integrated self. You don't have ideas or opinions, and there's no dialogue between us. That doesn't exist. There's your group, your identity, your struggle for power, and that's all.
This is your interpretation
No,
of it? Is this
no,
something
no,
that was found?
no. This is the fundamental essence of postmodernism. It's especially true in the format espoused by Derrida and Foucault. Foucault, everything's about power. Everything's about power. And Derrida was definitely, that's why he criticized the idea of logocentrism. Logos is that ability of the individual to engage in dialogue. The root for dialogue is logos, or logic. That's all criticized. That's all gone. The identity politics players, the people who are serious about this philosophically, they don't believe in the idea of the autonomous individual. That's gone. So it's not like they're playing a game within, you think, well, this is a game, we're all playing a game where we agree on some things, and we're just disagreeing about the details. It's like, oh no, you don't want to make that mistake. This critique is way, way deeper than that, which is why Derrida was opposed to the idea of logocentrism. He didn't believe in the idea of an autonomous individual. That didn't exist. That's just a fiction set up by those who have used the idea of the autonomous individual to advance their power maneuvering within the confines of the colonialist West.
Now, and what's the rationalization for that perspective? Is this to enhance their argument, to try to push forth their ideas in a less debatable way? Like, why?
I think the motivation is hatred for competence.
Hatred for competence.
I truly believe that. I've been trying to go down as deep as I could to find out. I think it's Cain and Abel. Wow. I really believe that. I think that because I can't understand the motivation otherwise. It's like, well, why are you tearing these things down? Well, it's on the basis, we have sympathy for the oppressed. It's like, well, why? Like, where in your conceptualization does that idea of sympathy for the oppressed come from? You don't even have the idea of the individual in your conceptualization. It's like, that's just I don't buy any of that. I think it's Cain and Abel all the way down.
Do you think that when you're talking about the Scandinavian model, where they've made it incredibly equal, and through this massive effort to take away any opportunity, or to rather open up every possible opportunity for women that men also have, and you've seen these differences in genders actually accentuate because of this, do you think that maybe what we're seeing also, even in terms of the postmodernists and the radical leftists versus people on the right, this same sort of competition aspect of it is also problematic, because it's one of the reasons why there's so much debate in the first place, and that if we had maybe more middle ground and more opportunity, there would be less of an argument. There would be less of a reason to have these extreme polar opposites that may be embracing of more, like, there's certain socialist aspects of our society that we just accept, right? Like the fire department, right?
Yeah.
Like police.
Universal provision of infrastructure.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Schools should be, I think, more emphasized in that direction, but it gears towards privatize schools for people with higher incomes, which gets away more from socialism and sort of reinforces capitalism more, right? But I think things like maybe perhaps even universal basic income, or certainly universal health care, which you guys have in Canada, which we don't have here, and definitely higher education, making higher education far more accessible and far less costly. Stop subsidizing these student loans. Stop making student loans something that you can never escape.
Well, I think this is part of the eternal debate, right? Because we've already talked about the utility of hierarchies and the necessity of putting those who can in charge. But the consequence of that, which is an unequal distribution of both talent and resources, well, you don't want that to get so steep that people stack up at the bottom, because your whole society starts to destabilize. And so you have to have a continual discussion between the left and the right to see how you stop the bottom from
suffering.
Yeah, from hitting zero.
Yes.
Because zero's not good. You can't play when you hit zero. And that's not good. And so I don't think there is a universal solution to that problem, because the problem keeps manifesting itself. Think about it as an eternal problem. Here's the problem. There's a set of problems that'll never go away. Now, what the problems are change, but the fact that there are problems never go away. Okay, the fact that you have to produce hierarchies to solve those problems never goes away. The fact that the hierarchies dispossess never goes away. But the details shift all the time. And so the whole reason that you need the political discussion is to take a look at the particulars of the hierarchies and the particulars of the dispossession and say, okay, well, now we need to shim it up here, and now we need to shim it up here, and now we need to adjust this, and now we need to adjust this, because you can't come up with a final solution to those problems. I think that's partly why you have consciousness itself. You know, because if you could automate the solution, imagine there was a permanent solution. Well, there's a permanent solution to breathing. You have a part of your brain that just breathes. You don't think about it. You don't adjust it. Well, you do a bit when you're talking, but you get my point. It's like problem taken care of. Well, there's other problems that are so fluid, like they're eternal problems, but they're so fluid in their detail that you need awareness and linguistic capacity to address them. And I would say the problem of hierarchy and dispossession fit exactly into that category. Is that we're going to organize ourselves hierarchically because talent is unequally distributed. It doesn't matter. Like as soon as you invent basketball and instantly, you know, there's 1% of the population who are super great at basketball. It doesn't matter. As soon as you set up an arbitrary value structure, you get a hierarchy.
I'm pretty friggin' tired, dude. Ooh. Alright. Yeah, I'm probably gonna get off now then. I will be back in 6 weeks. I am taking a break over Christmas and New Year's. There'll be no videos over January, and I'll be back early February. Yeah, just taking a break from you know, all this, just to spend time with family and stuff. Reset for the new year, get ready for the new football season, get ready for school. And yeah, we'll be back with more streams and more videos next year. But for now, I'm going to take a break. So, see ya.